Following Chrollo's victory over Hisoka in Heaven's Arena, and Hisoka's subsequent murder of both Shinnok and Cortopi, Chrollo Lucilfer is currently a broken man. A broken man with a broken plan for sweet, sweet revenge, and one that is currently threatening everything that he's worked to build, to tear the spiders limb by limb, and a plan that could bring him face to face with the monarch of the Kakin Empire, King Nasubi himself. Chrollo's plot in the Succession Contest arc is actually unusually straightforward, to the point where we can predict quite a few of his next moves. Essentially, Chrollo's endgame is to fight and kill Hisoka for good. However, in order to do that, Chrollo is searching for a quote, rare and powerful ability to steal. Chrollo there being quite vague to us, but he seems to know that someone aboard this ship has a very special Nen ability, yes. So special that Chrollo's current incarnation of a skill hunter can't actually steal it even after fulfilling its conditions, which adds a layer of complications, delicious complications that must be overcome, and Chrollo must now complete a task to upgrade Skill Hunter before he can focus on stealing this ability, before he can focus on fighting Hisoka. So think of it as Chrollo needing to upgrade his hardware in order to run new software, and the condition that Chrollo has set for this upgrade is to steal a national treasure, and so Chrollo has his eye on the Kakin Regalia. These are a series of 3 artifacts that power the Succession Contest as well as the prosperity of the Kakin Empire itself. There is the ritual vase used for succession battle participants, the Seed Urn. There's also the Divine Mummy, overseer of the succession battle, also known as the Lotus Anchoract, and the Sword of Accession given to the next king, the Sword of Good Omens. And currently Chrollo is on tier 3 of the Black Whale 1, but he seems to have a very good idea of where to find these artifacts. There must be a focal point, a funeral hall where the treasures are enshrined, which means it has to be in tier 1. And what Chrollo is referring to here, whether he realizes it or not, is the most mysterious and downright sinister room aboard the ship. This is the Kakin Prince Burial Chamber, which is designed to receive the bodies and life force of each departed prince. And you can see that all of their coffin-y things are all hooked up to an incredibly advanced system of Nen inscription, which almost certainly connects one or even all of the Kakin artifacts in order to keep the contest powered. So that is ultimately where Chrollo is heading, to the most sacred and highly secure spot on the entire ship. Tier 1, and we have no idea how he's going to get there. And even though Chrollo has a whole book full of fun Nen abilities, this is not supposed to be an easy task. If it was, then it would not be the condition to upgrade Skill Hunter. So this won't be your standard Phantom Troop heist, and it may in fact be the most difficult job that Chrollo has ever had to pull off. Especially since, unlike most underworld missions, he can't simply pay a ton of money on the hunter nets to figure out the location. Finding these artifacts easily would require someone who could hack directly into the Kakin Empire itself. There actually is a hunter in the series who specializes in hacking. His name is Ikshonpe Katocha, which is a corruption of the word for escape, both the act of fleeing and the computer key, as well as Ikshonpe's general behavior towards reality. And look, if I was a hunter using the hunter net, I would be looking for some protection from Ikshonpe's prying eyes, such as the sponsor of this video, Proton VPN. Because privacy is a fundamental human right. And look, forget the world of Hunter x Hunter. I can't imagine using our real-life internet without a VPN. With the particularly amazing thing about Proton VPN being that it is based in Switzerland, meaning that my data is protected by the strict laws that those wondrous Swiss citizens enjoy. Which means that in addition to their assorted cheeses, sausages, and chocolates, I can now enjoy their privacy protections as well. The Swiss have nothing that I do not. Proton VPN is extremely easy and intuitive to use, as it essentially encrypts your internet traffic and protects it from prying eyes, as well as allows you to unlock content typically subject to geo-blocking like TV shows, movies, sports, and even news. And with 15,000 servers in 122 countries, Proton VPN ensures high-speed, reliable connections wherever you are, as well as routes traffic through extra hardened servers in Switzerland, Iceland, or Sweden before it leaves their network, adding that extra layer of privacy. But the truly phenomenal thing about Proton is that it is a business that runs on subscriptions. Why is that important? Because there is no venture capital and there is no collecting and selling of your personal data. The only people that Proton have to answer to are you and me, also me. You must answer to me. So you can and should check out Proton VPN through my link in the description for a colossal 64% discount, which you can get through protonvpn.com/NewWorldReview. So definitely give it a go, but for now it's back to you, me, It's also unknown whether Chrollo has to steal just one or all three of the artifacts. All Chrollo says is that, quote, they would satisfy the conditions required to upgrade Skill Hunter. And my initial thinking is that just one would be fine, and hey, it might be, but also, it's a very tricky thing, and it's quite often extremely subjectively defined. For example, when Chrollo used the stolen ability Order Stamp, he stated that to him, Chrollo, there is no difference between a corpse and a puppet, as they're both inanimate objects to Chrollo. However, to the previous owner of Order Stamp, there was a big difference. And so it did not allow Chrollo to make puppets out of corpses. However, it did allow him to make puppets out of the gallery fake copies of the dead bodies. I guess what I'm trying to say with that example is that it is entirely dependent on how Chrollo himself views these artifacts. If he views them as three independent objects, then stealing one, that should be fine. However, if Chrollo views the three of them as a set, then I imagine that he would need to steal the complete set in order to fulfill Skill Hunter's condition. And as an aside, the fact that Chrollo was able to deduce that they're being kept in some kind of funeral hall, it's actually quite morbid. He's almost certainly correct, but it shows us a lot about how Chrollo thinks. He's been submerged in the world of dark, dank Nen for so long that he just innately knows how abilities like this are supposed to function. Chrollo knows that death must be intimately involved, and therefore where the artifacts must be located. And there's also something quite sad and a bit ominous about Chrollo marching straight into a burial chamber, because yes, there is an in-world logic to it, but from the meta perspective, this is also Togashi telling us that Chrollo is marching straight towards his own death, which we'll speak more on after something very, very important, which is that the key to all of this is an ability that's already been stolen by Chrollo, and we see a detailed description of this Hatsu when Chrollo opens up Skill Hunter, but unfortunately it is all written in Hunterese, which is the in-world language of Hunter x Hunter, a fairly simple substitution for basic Japanese characters, which is a shame for English or Japanese speakers who are just too lazy to translate it, because this text contains some very important contextual information that I would personally deem as essential. The name at the top of the page identifies this girl as Narumi Magai, and her ability name written on the side reads as Love Dial 6700 Disgusting Telephone, with the bulk of the text explaining the ability as the following. Disgusting Telephone allows you to search for your ideal partner using a conjured cell phone. After inputting the criteria, a 6 to 20 digit number will be displayed. When dialed, you will receive instructions. And currently Chrollo is using this ability to look for someone, although it's probably not a specific someone. The reason why Chrollo attended Hulkenberg's funeral procession on tier 3 was to take advantage of the large crowd, and in this case Chrollo's quote ideal partner is likely either someone who has the authority to get him to tier 1 or who has a Nen ability that can assist him in getting to tier 1. Whatever it may be, this ability, it is so handy, and I imagine it'll also be how Chrollo finds Hisoka once he's ready to fight him. Or if Chrollo wanted to use it more strategically, he could use it to avoid Hisoka by detecting him in the area. But it does have one restriction that we know of, could have more, which is that it has a limited number of calls that a user can make per day. But we don't know what that number is yet. And more so than logistical importance, this ability has some striking thematic importance to what remains of Chrollo's life. Love Dial 6700 Disgusting Telephone is an ability that, as per usual, takes its name from a combination of things it is that Togashi likes, in this case, songs. The first is Love Dial 6700 by Finger 5, who as far as I can tell are kind of like a Japanese Jackson 5. In fact, I believe they even covered Jackson 5 songs, and they were active throughout most of the 70s. Love Dial itself, it's a fun song about a school student calling to tell their crush that they love them just before graduation. And in the case of our fictional Narumi Magate, the original user of the ability who Chrollo stole it from, she likely takes on the role of that student's perspective. She does look quite young and would have been using this ability to find her perfect partner. And hopefully she found that partner before Chrollo stole her equivalent of Nen Tinder. But there is a pretty wicked twist about this regarding Chrollo and Hisoka, but also with Narumi herself. Narumi is extraordinarily unlikely to have been a hunter or anyone else with some kind of formal Nen training, meaning that she is a Nen genius, someone who is able to manifest and control her aura through pure drive and emotion alone, which is quite scary, because it means that Narumi's obsession with finding her perfect partner was on a scale that most people would refer to as psychotic. Nen geniuses in Hunter x Hunter tend to be rather tortured souls like the serial killer Benny Delon or Komugi, who developed her ability because at an early age she decided that she would end her own life if she ever lost a game of Gungi. So there's already a slightly troubling nature of the ability in that first part, and it does not get any better with the second. Disgusting Telephone is a song by P Model, a synth pop group that enjoys experimental experimental sound, often inserting quite harsh and deliberately off-putting sounds into their music, with the lead singer Susumu Hirasawa being described as an antagonistic vocalist, directly challenging the listeners in unpleasant ways, such as singing out of tune against the melody, or sometimes just electing to scream the lyrics. But when I say scream, I don't mean a proper metal kind of scream way. There's a very fine art to that. Whereas Hirasawa, particularly in the album that contains the song Disgusting Telephone, just wanted to create a vocal contrast that was antagonistic to the music itself. He wanted to make it sound not good on purpose. And it paints a pretty bleak picture of doomed love. With this ability, Narumi, she does find her ideal partner, but like making a deal with the devil, something goes very, very wrong. There is a clash, there is hostility, and either the partner, Narumi herself, or both turn out to be frighteningly incompatible. In the wise words of Zed, featuring Foxes, if our love is tragedy, then why are you my remedy? And I would be more inclined to go with Narumi herself being the core issue, just because this is the net ability that she manifested after all. But the reason why I go so far into the musical inspiration for this ability is because it tells us the story of what is happening inside Chrollo right now. Chrollo is ultimately searching for Hisoka. Hisoka is Chrollo's one and only reason to live right now. However, he also can't risk finding Hisoka yet because Chrollo does not have the ability required to kill him for good. However, in Chrollo's own words, it's getting harder to keep control over two conflicting emotions. I mustn't be impatient, but I can't wait forever. So the Disgusting Telephone song may as well be Chrollo's theme at the moment, as he is being pulled apart by these two conflicting and contrasting emotions, each wanting to lead him down a different path. And I also think it pretty perfectly represents the dynamic between Chrollo and Hisoka, especially from Hisoka's perspective, as he has spent most of Hunter x Hunter searching for his perfect partner, constantly dialing and confessing his battle love to Chrollo. And with Hisoka in mind, here are some lyrics from the Love Dial song. I like you so much I could die. I want you to accept my love. That is Hisoka right there. And there's also something rather poetic about Chrollo using the most Hisoka ability possible to prepare and meet Hisoka one last time before graduation. So it's not a random ability where Chrollo conjures a phone and locates stuff, as is often the case in Hunter x Hunter. The inspiration behind the abilities provides a wealth of context that we often miss. It's not just abilities though. Sometimes, mate, you've got to scour every last pixel of Hunter x Hunter to really get the full story, especially when it comes to Chrollo, such as his reintroduction in chapter 405. This is very important because it contains a surprising revelation that's extremely easy to miss. As we check in with Chrollo on what I assume is tier 3, there is a close-up of a TV screen reporting that it's been 10 years since the brutal murder of Mr. Riznorth, the chairman of Mom's Help, the charity foundation dedicated to helping children. That's lovely. Good on him. And the presenter then goes on to state that no suspects have ever been caught for the murder of Mr. Riznorth, as Chrollo walks away from the screen, artistically implying that Chrollo had something to do with this man's death, which is something that we don't need to speculate on at all, because you may not know it, but we have seen Mr. Riznorth before. He was in the Phantom Troop flashback. In chapter 395, we see the bottom of his face with his trademark mole, meaning that Riznorth was the man abducting children from Meteor City and murdering them on camera to sell the resulting films on the black market. And also meaning that his charity dedicated to helping children was a charity dedicated to trafficking children and probably brutally murdering them. And more so than any other single Hunter x Hunter character, Mr. Riznorth is responsible for the creation of the Phantom Troop, because it was Riznorth who then abducted and killed Sarasa. And something I don't think I've mentioned on this channel before is that Sarasa's death was particularly gruesome. On the last page of chapter 396, we see Riznorth commenting that people are becoming a bit too vigilant around this here Meteor City, and that the era of, quote, hunting here may be coming to a close. Going on to state that if we find one last one, we'll make sure to have some fun. And Sarasa, very unfortunately, was that last one. So everything it is they could have done to her, they did to her, in order to make sure that they had one last spectacular movie film to sell to their buyers. A particular brand of brutality that changed Chrollo forever after discovering Sarasa's body, and which led to Chrollo developing his multi-year plan to turn Meteor City into a black market haven, to create something of a safe space where, how shall we say, alternative artists can screen their, how shall we say, alternative films, with the hope of one day seeing Sarasa's movie on the big screen and discovering who was credited with creating it, which they did. They saw the film, they saw their friend being brutally cut to pieces, and they found out who did it. And I cannot imagine the degree of suffering that the Phantom Troop put Riznor through before they finally let him leave this world. For one thing, it's a very popular idea that Veitan, the torture specialist, had been studying torture solely for the day that they discovered Sarasa's killer. And also that Pakunoda developed her Nen ability in order to confirm who killed Sarasa by reading their thoughts. In fact, most of the original Phantom Troop members have abilities that were designed to assist in the Sarasa quest, and it's quite a bleak triumph of teamwork. The Spider came together with Chrollo as the head and perfectly implemented a plan to ensnare its prey. But then we've got to ask, why is Togashi telling us all of this now, and how does it relate to Hisoka? Well, I believe that this has been revealed as an element of contrast, as the Phantom Troop are now functioning in completely the opposite way. They are fractured, they are not level-headed, they have no plan, and instead of meticulously setting a trap for Hisoka, they are more than likely walking straight into a trap. Trap might be the wrong word. Hisoka, he doesn't really function like that. He prefers to live in the moment, meaning that improvised combat and being forced to operate on natural battle instinct is well and truly the Battle Clown's domain. He may well be the greatest improviser and adapter in the entire series, which is particularly alarming because Hisoka's fighting style spits in the traditional wisdom of Nen combat, which is focused on gathering as much information as possible and preparing for an encounter. Hisoka, he doesn't care. He'll figure it out as he goes along. And I don't think that Chrollo stands a chance against Hisoka in that format. With Chrollo, you've got to use the standard Batman argument of prep time, as people often claim that with some prep time, Batman is unstoppable. Whether that's true or not, I'll leave to the more Western comically inclined, but I can say that it's true for Chrollo. Chrollo's prep time against Hisoka for the Heaven's Arena fight lasted an entire year. Chrollo spent a year fleeing Hisoka's advances, traveling around the world, and gathering a series of Nen abilities that functioned in concert to doom Hisoka the moment that his challenge was accepted. Chrollo versus Hisoka in Heaven's Arena may be one of the most one-sided fights in all of Hunter x Hunter, and it was an absolute masterclass of wisdom and sheer patience on display by Chrollo. But as we've already explored, in this case, Chrollo's patience is severely limited, and he is at risk of being overtaken by emotion. Chrollo wants to kill Hisoka so badly that he is forfeiting prep time. And yes, Chrollo does still have a plan. He's searching for the special ability to kill Hisoka for good. However, we're talking about a few days, a couple of weeks at most. In fact, I don't know, in the current events of the manga, we're talking about maybe 10 to 12 hours before this arc is over. And that is the time that Chrollo has to prepare for a fight against a post-mortem Nen Hisoka, more powerful than ever before, when originally Chrollo took a whole year to prepare to fight him in round 1. And he can't use the same strategy that he used in round 1 because Hisoka took away 2 of those Nen abilities by killing Shalnak and Kotopi. And to go back to the Riznorth situation, that wasn't just Chrollo. Taking Riznorth down was a combined troop effort. They were working together brilliantly, facilitating and complementing one another. But aboard the Black Whale 1, the Phantom Troop are not working together. They fractured into cells and are so furious at Hisoka that they are competing against each other for the right to be the one who finds and kills him first. And remember that we're talking about a group that describes itself as a spider, but in this case, the head has abandoned the legs, and each of the legs are now wobbling around trying to make their own way without the guidance of the head. And meanwhile, the head is trying to action a plan with no legs. In addition to that, some of the legs are even operating in a space of sheer confusion, like Benolanov and Shizuku, whilst other legs have their own legsome agendas that may not necessarily coincide with what the head and other legs have in common. Because we have 2 Zoldyks who are now Phantom Troop members, with Kaluto trying to accomplish something vague in regards to one of his brothers, we don't know who yet, and Illumi is always a complete wildcard. He stated that Hisoka hired him to kill him, but that could easily be a lie and cover for the true purpose that he has been hired to serve. And in terms of raw power, this may be the strongest incarnation of the troop that we've ever had. Yes, we're missing an Uvogin, but Illumi does so much heavy lifting. But in terms of organization, the troop has never been weaker, and they are dangerously close to concluding their time on this planet, with Chrollo being in the worst position of any of them. From his perspective, one of the reasons why he's verging on giving into irrational impatience is because this is a race. The rest of the troop are also gunning for Hisoka, so Chrollo can't take too long to slowly plan as per usual. But the true tragedy of that is stated by Benolanov in chapter 405 after he becomes the first troop member to find Hisoka. I should just ask Chrollo, but I'd really like to get Finks' group to deal with Hisoka. We all know Chrollo is hurting over Shalnak and Kotopi, and he's trying to act like he's fine because he knows that we know. That's why everyone wants to kill Hisoka first, before Chrollo can get to him. Let's let Hisoka be the last and close the curtain on this this performance. Benolanov's choice of language there at the closing of the curtain feels particularly poignant, as the Phantom Troupe are all thematically modeled after traveling performers, in addition to movie monsters. And while Benolanov may be thinking that he wants this show to end, what Togashi could be foreshadowing through this line is that the company is going out of business, because they'll all be dead. And weirdly enough, if the rest of the troupe just backed off and let Chrollo do his thing, grieve his own way, then he may have a much better chance of surviving the next encounter with Hisoka. As it is, the rest of the troupe wanting to protect Chrollo is just accelerating Chrollo's spiral into self-destruction. Chrollo is being impatient and he wants to take to the stage before completing his rehearsals. And look, even if everything goes to plan, I think that Chrollo does understand that this quest will claim his life. Again, it doesn't get any more symbolically obvious than a character searching for a literal graveyard. And in his final appearance at the time of this recording, Chrollo thinks to himself, the spiders will go on. Even if I may die, that is worthy of all my design of the spiders. Which is a fantastic display of feels and personal drive, but I'm not sure if it's true. I think that Chrollo may be severely overestimating the structure that he's created and underestimating the damage that his personal feelings and actions are causing it. And if anyone is ultimately responsible for the destruction of the spider, even if Hisoka kills each and every one of them with his bare hands, it will be Chrollo who gifted him that opportunity.